The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar. Today we've got a fantastic webinar in store all around strategic business leader. My name is Alexander Leach and today we are joined by Dino, one of our ACCA SBL gurus. Just before we get stuck into the content, may I just do a general little bit of housekeeping, which is if you have any technical issues while we're going through this webinar today, please just refresh, come back in and we shouldn't have a problem whatsoever. As we go along, feel free to use the question panel on the left-hand side to fire in any questions, which I will be able to and Dino will be able to answer. We've got a lot to go through, so we'll try and get through it in an hour, and we'll try and save some time towards the end for some dedicated questions. But I do hope you enjoy it. Again, thank you for joining us, and I'll hand over to Dino to take us away. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alex, and great to be back doing another webinar. This is the first of a series of 2 webinars we will be doing on SBL, and I know all of you are a bit concerned because the exams are coming up in September. There is still a very good amount of time to get prepared, and these 2 webinars will really help you enhance your chances of passing. And as Alex said, my name is Dino. I'll be going over a few things today for this hour that I'll be getting into in a moment. I think many of you have read about me through, I assume, the invitation you received. I do lots of work for ACCA, lots of webinars and lots of trainings for a number of organizations, and I travel the world, not now during COVID, of course, but I've been traveling to close to 50 countries doing trainings for SBL and other courses. So I think I can help you organize your thoughts today and get you going on be doing very, very well for SBL. So the agenda today has to do with the following. I'm going to go through a very brief overview of the exam. Some of you, of course, are maybe taking the exam again. Some of you, or most of you, probably are taking it for the first time. So it's important to know what we need to do and clarify and reinforce what you have in mind. Number 2, on how to organize the material. I have a technique I want to share with you. I want to show you, and we all are also going to share everything with you after this webinar, so you can have a chance to download or print or have a look at what I'm going to tell you. Number 3, how to understand how to get the skills. As you know, SBL is a combination of skills, of skills marks and technical marks, and we need to clarify and decode that. I will give you a technique on how to manage your time. Time is very important in this long, I would say, exam, but this exam is long, but that's also a positive thing. People are only seeing this sometimes as a negative. I think it's positive because ACCA gives you lots of time, and you have to see the positive of having more time. Whereas in the old days, we did not have enough time, so that is kind of positive as well. I will give you the reasons why people fail SBL, so you do not make these mistakes. All this, of course, from the examiner's reports and from my experience teaching this course, and of course, other courses from ACCA. And also, I will kind of at the end give you the key areas to pass. I call them 100 areas, and there's more to do. ACCA has a number of resources for you. And at the end, if we have the time, of course, I think we'll go over some questions and answers. I have some ready-made questions for you, but of course, you can give your question to us, and I'll try to make sure I answer it. So let's move on. The exam itself, if you remember, 4 hours. That's good, we said. It's not only bad. Some people say it's too long, as I said, but 4 hours is quite good. There's 100 marks, but remember that the 100 marks are broken down into 80 for technical content. I'll explain that, and 20 for the skills. The first thing I want to say here, because I want to make this webinar very useful for you, is that you don't have extra time for the skills marks. As you're writing your answer for the technical marks, you are also gaining skills marks. So you're actually spending 80% of the time to get 100% of the marks. I will clarify that as we go on as well. Okay, so don't worry, I'll give you an example at the end on how that works. So don't worry too much about the extra time required. but make sure while you're writing, you are writing it in an organized way, always addressing the skill you have in mind. 50 marks to pass, that hasn't changed. And of course, remember that you will have lots of information to read. I'm going to give you a technique on how to read this information. It's going to be a lot of information, but it's very useful, okay? So you need to know how to maneuver, how to move around and go to these certain pages, exhibits, and how to use them for your answer. So don't be intimidated, don't be afraid, just make sure you know how to use, how to make notes on these pages. And finally, something very, very important, all the questions are on one case. This is good. People also feel a bit afraid because it's long, as I said, but this is positive because if you have one storyline, as time goes by through the exam, you get better at it. You know where to find the information from the exhibits, so you can go back and relate and correlate some information. So the first hour may be a bit difficult, the second hour may be less difficult, the third hour, as time goes by, it's on the same story. It's on one case and one industry, usually. So that's very positive. So you do have more time, and it's on one story. Let's see how we can organize our thoughts in this story. This is an example slide of what you will see in the exam. For those of you who haven't done too much studying yet, it's good to know. And for those of you who have studied a lot already, you will have a series of exhibits. Exhibits is a very fancy word for document, or basically it's some information on the case. It may be a website page. It could be, for example, a passenger survey finding. It could be a transport report, an article, could be anything. This is what you will do in real life. If some of you are working, you know this already. You have information given to you and you're trying to make sense of it. So we have usually 6 exhibits, 6 documents that we will have that will help us understand what's going on. Usually these exhibits are 1 page, but sometimes it could be a page and a half, but it also could be half page. So on average, you may get 6, 7 pages of exhibits, maybe 8. And then the other part of the exam would be the background information of the company and the questions. So it's not too difficult. If you see it in this way, you need to have exhibits. Sometimes it's good to have a lot of exhibits to find the answer to the requirement. So don't feel, again, intimidated. So these are just sample. This is an example from from specimen 2, if I remember well. Now, this is a technique that I use, and this is going to be shared with everyone. I'm sure some of you have probably found this through the ACCA resources. This is the SBL flowchart, and this is how to organize your thoughts. That's a lot of information to study SBL. So what I've done, and this is something, as I said, that will be shared with you, but also I will give you a link coming up where you can find this flowchart, and it's clickable. You can click on certain areas and a video pops out of myself explaining about 30 or 40 big important areas like project management, risk management, corporate governance, the value chain, 5 forces, SWOT, all these models. I'm explaining them. So you'll find this on the ACCA resources page. Let me go there for a moment. I'll come back to the flow chart. This is the link on the bottom, learningcommunity.accaglobal.com/SBL. Even if you don't take a note of it now, you will be sent the slides. So don't worry, you can have a look at it and you can click on certain areas here on the flow chart and learn more and study, through the videos as well. It's kind of useful. Students find it very useful, so I think you will as well. Now, what have I done here? I tried to organize the whole SBL material and in order to make sense of it. Now, if you have studied, allow me to go over it for a couple of minutes only, and I will come back to this if required, but this is the way to organize your thoughts. Everything starts with governance. A company needs to be organized from the top. setting the tone at the top. So I always start with corporate governance, talking about stakeholders who are involved, talking about, what is agency relationship, what is risk management, the various, for example, types of codes of corporate governance on the right side, what is ethics. The company needs to be ruled from the top. So if you go over each of these areas, and there are about 100 areas, and that's why I call them 100 areas to pass SBL. And thank you very much, Alex, for posting the link. That's very useful to everyone. So it's very important to know these words, these terms, and what they're all about, not in terms of defining them, even though it's always useful to define things. You may not get marks purely just by defining something, but you need to know what it's all about. I'll give you examples, but I start with governance, ethics, stakeholders, the board, and risk management. And then I move into the strategic part, because the board sets the vision, the board sets the mission of the organization. And then in the yellow areas, I go over outside and inside models. Some models refer to the outside environment of a company. Okay, imagine a company and you have outside elements like politics, economics, social issues, competition. That's Pastel, 5 Horses, the national advantage. That's from outside scenarios. And then you go inside, look in my cursor, which you talk about capabilities, skills, our strategy, our prices, our value chain. These are the inside elements. We market those. Marketing is in the middle. We check the financials, and based on the yellow areas, you go to your SWOT. And after your SWOT, you grow the company by using 2 or 3 main areas like growth, and then the common methods to grow like acquisitions and mergers. And then you always evaluate by asking yourself, is it suitable? Is it acceptable? And is it feasible? And then you implement. There's change happening when you do that. There's structure changes sometimes, and also how to manage projects. So if you look at this flow, this takes a whole book from, I assume you're using approved content providers or your notes or, your training. I'm sure your trainers have given you the information. And this is just a nice way to put it on one page to make sure and make you feel inspired that you understand the material. So I will come back to this because it's not easy just to to cover this in a few minutes, but you got the idea. And and my students always go over the various topics, stakeholders, committees. What are they? Why are they there? What's the board all about? What is CPD? What is the non-executive director? Who's a chairman? What does he do? What's agency? So all these points, plus the models, plus the theories, you get a good understanding of what's going on. And the flow chart, therefore, to summarize, helps you understand a business holistically. What does that mean? In total, not just one area. It goes around everything you need to know, even to start up a business or to analyze a business. It shows the arrows and the links and things you can use in your answer if they're close to that area, because chances are it does affect your answer. So the blue areas, governance, yellow is analysis. I don't have to go over it. We will be sending you this. And if we have more questions, I have a second webinar with all of you and more people that are going to be attending in August. I think it's August 17th, and you will get an invitation. And I will go over all the last tips and tricks for you and coming back to the flow as well. So it helps you make it more manageable. I don't have to read this. You can go and have a look, but I just put one extra slide to show you that it really helps to organize your reading and your studying. So as I said now, 20% of the answers in SBL come from skills. Now, I have to explain something here. The markers, the people who mark your script, how do they mark it? You have to know the logic. If you know the logic, it will really help you do better in your answer. So what do? They mark the technical content. Let me give you an example of that. So let's say you have to analyze Amazon, the company, Amazon's competition. So you go over the power of suppliers, the power of buyers. Let's say we have a case on that. And the skill that you're being asked is actually being, let's say, being good in communication. That's the skill for 2 extra marks or 4 extra marks. The marker will go over the technical content and mark it, and then they will go back and reread. They don't mark both areas at the same time. So they will mark the content and say, oh, this person did involve and did include the area of politics being, very influential for Amazon and the tax issues and blah, blah, blah. That's fine. But then they go back and say, what is it? Communication. Let me see if the student is good in communication. Does the student have a good layout? Is the student repeating? Is the student clear in what they're saying? Does the student have paragraphs? Are they spacing it well? Because that's part of communication. So they don't do the whole thing. They go back and reread. So don't think that it's kind of easy to get away with it. You need to make sure that you remember that they will go back and read the skill. Okay, so we need to go well in the skill, because if we don't, we're missing a very big chunk of possible marks, which usually are not as difficult. And I have a technique for that as well. So listen to my way on how to understand the skill. And I know you understand the 5 skill areas. To remind you, they're in the flow on the left side here. So commercial acumen is 1, analysis, communication, evaluation, and skepticism. And I have them on the left side because these skills go throughout, of course, every topic in SBL. Now, how do I kind of deliver them? How do I teach them? Communication is, for me, about 4 bullets. Ensure you have the correct layout. So if you have a skill that says communication is 2 marks, make sure let's say you have a slide if you're being asked to write slides. If it's a report, it must say to Dino, from Alex, date. All these things have to be there. It has to be clear. Don't try to make sure you make short sentences. Though I think I'm quite good with international students because I've been teaching around the world. And one tip I've been giving them is to write short sentences. We all have the tendency to write long sentences because maybe that's what we're accustomed to, but it's probably easier for you to write short sentences that make sense. The examining team has said, not only to me, but in various conferences and on webinars, that they do not check the English, okay? If it's wrong, they say if it makes sense, that's fine. And that's how it should be. It's an international, global qualification. So no one's going to correct English, but you need to make sure you're clear, okay? What's the best way? Short sentences. That's one tip. And the second tip, and I was asking my colleague Alex, who introduced us a few minutes ago on the handwritten side of things, because all our students most students are taking it handwritten, SBL still as a professional stage paper. So what I advise you, again, if your handwriting is not good, write capital letters. And that's the trick. If you write capital, people usually understand what you're writing by 90%. So those are the 2 tips to make it easy for you. So layout, very important. Be clear, be persuasive. I know that's difficult, meaning, make sure you have good arguments. I'll give you an extra tip later. And try not to repeat. The markers have told me this. They go over, they don't want people to repeat and waffle. So that's the first skill. Analysis, my favorite. Why is it my favorite? Because you always have to say why. This is what analysis, if they say 2 marks for analysis, it means you have to say something, whatever you're saying, blah, 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 because. So the marker is kind of looking for the because word. It sounds like a simple technique, but it's a true one. Every time we say something and we say the word because, usually a mark follows because you're explaining something. You're elaborating on it. So whenever you have analysis of a financial statement, you got to say blah, 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 or the company's not doing well, probably because of, or this ratio indicate that, probably because you're explaining. That's analysis. You're explaining why. And if you want to ask me another tip, whatever skill you have, you always have to say why. That's how you kind of can be sure that you'll get marks. If you're descriptive and you're not explaining why, 0 marks. The markers cannot give you a mark if you're just describing something. So let me give you an example. You can't say that, let's say, in the national competitive advantage, Porter's Diamond, to remind you of another nice model that you have in SBL. It talks about, how unique and how countries can have a competitive advantage. And you can't say that I come from Greece, for example. I'm actually in Greece right now, and we're very good in tourism. We're selling our climate. The weather is very good. But I can't just say Greece is good in tourism. I have to explain why I'm saying that, because we have the islands, the climate, which is favorable, and this and that. And I have to say something that would elaborate and explain why I'm making my point. So make sure you write why for analysis. Number 3, as a skill, evaluation, pros and cons, plus and minus, positive and negative. That's it. What is it worth for the company? Evaluate. Why should we have an internal audit department? Well, it's good for these reasons. And of course, there's some negative aspects, because there's higher costs, because we have to set it up, we have to find the right people, the people need to be certified, possibly with ACCA, it's difficult to find and pay the people. So positive, negative, what's the value of something? So I just put positive, negative, pros and cons, advantages, disadvantages. What's the value of something for the organization, for what you're being asked? And the last bullet is crucial. Everyone who makes a mistake forgets to have a balance. They write too many things that are positive and no negative. Too many things that are pro and no cons. Too many advantages or disadvantages and no. So remember to have a balance. That's why you miss the marks. You feel that you've written everything, but the balance is not there. So how can you get full marks? The next one here is commercial acumen, if I remember well, because I have this my control panel in front of me. How do market or industry forces affect the organization? What does that mean? It means basically that whatever happens outside the company, how does the outside environment affect the company? So I call it from outside inside, the outside in theory. How is the commercial, what's the politics, economy, the pastel, the competition, the government regulations, something that's coming from the commercials affecting my organization? That's the best way to understand the commercial acumen. The word acumen means understanding. So how well do you understand what's going on? The last skill is skepticism, which is it's a simple word, more simple than you think, which actually says be skeptical. When you read something, be skeptical. Now, what does that mean? It means don't take things for granted. Don't agree on what you're reading. So if the requirement says you will get 2 marks for being skeptical, it means you have to start questioning. You need more information. What types of information? You can't conclude. You can't, make a conclusion or a summary of what's going on because you need more information. Where was this information? Where is it coming from? Maybe they need to do this and that. That's being skeptical. I'm not accepting it. Okay? So challenge and question what is going on. Now, this is my little methodology on how to manage your time. You will have 4 hours, which means that you could spend about an hour, okay, not too much, 45 to 50 minutes, which is as much as halftime in a football game. For those of you who like football, if you're watching a game, 45 minutes is a lot of time. It's until halftime. So how do you do that? These 45 minutes you need to take notes. So step 1, read the background. The case will have some background information about the company. Read that, okay? Read it. Then step 2, you scan those exhibits I told you. I don't want you to go into detail. I would advise you to scan. Scan means what? Have a look. Start making little, maybe highlight some areas. Check that exhibit 2 probably goes to this, okay? Just try to see what you have. There's an article on something. There's minutes from a meeting. Scan them. Don't read them yet. Scan them. And then go back to the requirements, which are in the beginning usually, to see what they're asking you. What are the issues? Something on internal audit, a non-executive director that needs to be recruited, or maybe something, a company that may be acquired. See what you're being asked. And then you go back to the exhibits and highlight, annotate, underline, and make your outlines, let's say. And then you start writing. Now, if you remember project management, which is a topic in SBL, we always say that planning is the beginning of everything. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So this is a planning methodology. Use it. Don't get psyched up and start writing. It's wrong. You need to make sure that you start to read well, plan well, take your time. I prefer that you take your time, even if you want to exceed it, go to an hour. Could you imagine 1 hour? Let's read. And then you have 3 hours to go over the questions. So management of time is good. If you start writing early, you may overlap, you may not read well, it won't look good, and it won't be professional, which is probably the most important point for SBL. We want you, students, to be professional, and professionals, take their time and plan well to avoid mistakes in, the duration of the exam. So we will be sending you this, and that's what, you need to do. So remember, let me just go back for a moment to see if everything is fine with the system. Just one moment. You can see my screen. Give me one moment. There we go. And we have the control panel, and I will open this up. Excellent. I think we should be okay. Just want to make sure that I'm doing the right thing here. And there we go. And slideshow would be here. Perfect. So SBL, the aim is to try to be a consultant. You're consulting companies, right? You are a consultant. That's what we want you to kind of feel like. So assume that role, okay? And we want to simulate the workplace and make sure that you are being professional. What is professional? Always being clear, having commercial acumen, being skeptical when required, making sure you write well, you use the appropriate models, and you are always ethical. If I can give you a combined definition. That's a little bit more theory. Apologies if I tired you. Now, why do candidates fail? I love this part, and this is from the examiner's reports. So if you read the examiner's reports, this is what you'll be reading. Many of you fail to extend your answers. Now, I have to explain this. You may be very clear and write the answer in a couple of paragraphs. If the answer will award you 10 marks, you cannot have 2 paragraphs. Where are the marks? If this exam was about answering only, you would be able to pass very easy, like that. But unfortunately, we need to extend to get the appropriate marks. 10, 12, 15 marks, maybe even 18 marks. These are long questions, which means you need more analysis. And that's what I'm trying to give you a distinction. It's very easy to answer, but it's very difficult to give the extension, to get the extension. Okay, let me just check if everything's okay. I had just had a message from the connectivity of my Wi-Fi. If it's a bit slow, please let me know through the chat box if everything's fine. Anyway, I'll continue. So why do candidates fail? They fail to extend. I need you to extend. I need you to write more. That is very important. And as all the markers always tell us, I want to award marks, but there is nothing to read. There's not too much to read. You cannot spend too much time on a 5-mark question. You spend time on a 10-mark question or a 15-mark question. So try to extend. This is always a classic reason of failure. Number 2, You fail to apply the theories. There's a lot of theories. I will be going over all the theories. I'm telling you what to use based on a technique on the 17th of August. So tune in because I will help you with this. But I can give you some details at the end if you want. So you fail to apply the theory. The examiners have said, we don't want you to define the model. We don't want you to explain what the model does. We want you to apply the model. It's similar to what I would be doing, for example, if I'm consulting a company and I want to talk about the value chain. I will not tell the company, oh, let me tell you what the value chain is. The value chain is a theory that it has 9 activities that developed by Michael Porter, which I wouldn't do that. I would talk about the value chain. I would tell the owner, you know, listen, I think the procurement department is not coordinating effectively with the marketing department. And that's one area of the value chain, which blah, blah. I'm applying it. I'm not explaining it. So you need to apply the theory, and that's quite important. Use the exhibits. You need to go back and check the exhibits. Which exhibit is useful for the answer? You can't just write in theory. You have to use the name of the company, the name of the people involved in the company, the spreadsheets, the financials in the exhibits. You have to refer back to them. As indicated in the spreadsheet, the amount of fraud or the number of the people not paying their tickets in the rail company is over 30%. And this may indicate I'm using the exhibit, not just theory. So extend your answer, apply the theory, use the exhibits. And of course, the last one, sorry, being right here, going back, remember the skills. People forget the skills. As I told you, the marker will go back and check the skill. Why are you writing in that way? Why are you using a more skeptical approach? Why are you evaluating pros and cons, if you remember? So extension, application, using the exhibits and referring back to them, and using the skill, those are the 4 areas that people make mistakes, and unfortunately, they end up failing. So here's a technique, and before you can start reading this, let me just check if everything is okay. Let me just check because I haven't heard from the team. Maybe I'm talking to myself all this time, who knows? Is it all good? And let me just get a
Everything's absolutely fine. You know, yeah, sorry, we were just all taking such good attention, and we've not had any connectivity issues. Students are really engaged as well.
Fine.
We've been having plenty of questions coming through. We'll save that towards the end, but just for the audience, everyone, questions coming in, and we'll do our best to answer them. Thank you very much, Dina. We've got about half an hour or so left, but I'm really looking forward to carrying on. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you. I just felt a bit lonely for it at a point. So a simple system to use, I came up with this 6 W's theory, which may help you because students like to have a technique. So whenever you have a requirement, who am I? You assume a role in SBL. You're a consultant, you're a director, you're the leader, you're a new recruit. I don't know. You assume a role. So remember, I'm asking, who am I? Ask yourself. Number 2, why? Why is the issue being asked? Why are they asking me this? Okay, you can also use this, what is the issue? I call it, why are they asking me about this issue? You know, maybe there's a problem with fraud. Maybe the company doesn't have good financials. Maybe someone needs to, you know, fire someone. What is the issue? What is the skill? Remember, skepticism, communication. What is the vibe I have to write in? Who do I write to? Who's my audience? I'm writing the answer to my colleague, to my leader, to my board, to a magazine. It's an article. I don't know. I will be getting into layouts in the second webinar, the last one on August 17th, reminding you of this session today, plus also getting into layouts, writing the theories, and all the tips I can give you. So what is the type of layout? That's the number 5, the 5th W. Is it a briefing paper, a report? Is it slides? Is it a press release? Is it a PID? I don't know. So you have to ask yourself. And finally, which model or theory can I use? Not to define the theory, but use it to organize your thought and your answer. So maybe I can use SWOT. Maybe I can use, let's say, the integrated reporting theory. Why is that important? What is integrated reporting? What are the elements of it? So always think of something. There's always information from the flow chart or from your readings to use something. Usually that's about 80 or 90%. There are answers that you don't have to use any theory. That could be common sense. Some people ask me, can I pass with common sense? The answer is probably yeah, you could. There's nothing against not writing, and you don't have to write a theory, but the theory helps you structure your answer. I use it because I organize my thoughts this way. Let me go further. So this is one of my exam techniques. I want to share this with you to give you a little tip. If you're being asked anything in terms of corporate governance, almost anything, I'll be honest, almost anything. And what do I mean by corporate governance? I mean, why do we have corporate governance? Why are we doing integrated reporting? Why do we have to follow code of ethics? Why, do people have to, let's say, understand risk? And why do we have a board? All these questions on the top part of the flow can be answered partly by using answers like, because we need to be fair, because we need to be independent, because it's important to be more accountable, because it's important to enhance reputation, blah, blah, blah. All these words, or some of these words. If you're being asked, why do companies have non-executives? Because non-executives help with the transparency, enhance the reputation, they use their expertise and have better judgment, and they enhance the integrity of the company. Well, of course, you will explain why, but this is a key reason why we do corporate governance. So half of the course, if you want to put it that way, is all about these things. Why do we have a code of ethics? For this slide. Why do we follow corporate governance? For this slide. Why does the board have to have a balance of NEDs? Why does the board have to have different types of expertise? Why do we train them? Because of all these words. Why do we do integrated reporting? Because it helps the investors understand, be more accountable in judgment. This is a key technique. And I know it sounds simple. I'm not telling you just to write the words. I can't say that. But based on these words, you got the idea. This is the reason why in ACCA, we want you to know these words. So this is a very important key slide. And it's in the flow chart on the top part. And when you see it, when we send this to you, you will get the understanding. So overall, address the requirements as written. Make sure you check the verbs. I'll get into that in the last webinar. Don't worry. Make sure you include the most relevant points, avoid repeating, and make sure you're professional. So I hope I gave you some of the initial areas. When writing, use the exhibits that are there. And usually they always ask me, does one exhibit go for one requirement? The answer is yes. Usually one is good enough, but in many cases, you can use 2 or even 3 exhibits to comment because SBL is holistic. So maybe you're writing something on the company not doing well because the reputation of the company is down, and that's also affecting the financials of the company, which is in a different exhibit. So you want to have information from 2 exhibits. So usually 1 is the main exhibit. That's from up to now what we've seen in the past exams. Very important, and maybe 2 or even 3 in less occasions. Use short sentences. Remember who you're writing to because the vibe has to be there. I'm writing to the owner of the company. Very important. I have to be respectful. Dear Mr. Alex, I would like to. That's very important. The guy's the owner. He's the leader of the board. Dear Chairman, or members of the board. If it's someone very close, you can say dear Dino. So it all depends. These things are professional. You may lose marks. Okay, remember that. Use subheadings. Introduction, conclude. Always say why. I have the word why bold here because if you do explain and say why you're saying something, you're always going to get a mark. It's impossible not to give a mark as long as you're saying something logical. Okay, so remember why. Always justify everything. Then that's what I always say in life. It's like going to my children and say, don't do that. If I tell my child don't do that, that's aggressive and they don't understand why I'm saying it. But if I say, don't do that because you may get hurt, they understand me better. So having why is always very important. Space, define. I like defining. And even though many people would probably disagree with me because maybe you won't get a mark, I think defining is good if it's short. So for example, if you want to say something on benchmarking, it's good to say what benchmarking is in a report. Benchmarking is the process of comparison against someone best in class, and it helps the companies by blah, blah, and it could help Dino's company so you can define it. You will probably get a mark overall for that. Avoid harsh language. What is harsh language? It's a difficult word if you're not, of course, from an Anglo-Saxon country. It means don't be sure. Don't be really, really confident, because if you're a consultant, we always write with may, could, possibly. SBL does want you to recommend, but it's always good to have a limitation. However, blah, 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 blah. However, use a couple of howevers. It's a limitation. There is no, I work as a consultant as well. Okay, I didn't tell you a lot of things about me, but you can find information. I do consultancy to companies. And to be honest, I never say, this is the only way to do it. Listen to me. I have the answer. Pay me and I'll tell you. No one does that. It's silly. You need to say, this is a very good opportunity if we are able to do this. And possibly, if this works out and the government gives the funding under the COVID situation, then possibly that's the way to write. So if you do that, then you have a more consulting writing. You will give your recommendation by saying, this is probably one of the good, or possibly a good way to confront the challenges. However, so you are giving an answer, but you're also providing a limitation. And finally, introduction and conclusion. That's very important. If you do have an introduction, then you must have a conclusion. It's logical. And by the way, another good point. If you don't say the word conclusion, you don't have a conclusion. This is a little detail. Or for example, if you have to write a report and you don't say report, there's no report. Now this sounds silly, and you may say, come on, Dino, is that detail? You just gotta say something. When you write something, it's a report. It's a slide. What is it? You make a boxing, what is it? Slide 1. Sorry. If it's a letter, you have to make sure it's a letter on top. So if you do write these things, the markers see that you followed the layout. And I just gave you 3 or 4 or 5 marks today, because if you just do these little things along with the knowledge you have, you will start building confidence. And we still have a lot of time, a couple of months until the exam. So sorry, this is the time to start getting inspired. Now, this is my last slide for today, because I do have an example, but I'm not going to go over the example. We can do that on the 17th. I have 2 examples, but we can also go over some of these frequently asked questions to help you. And then I'll give a pass to Alex to help me with the questions that we have from all of you guys. So can I use 2 or 3 models for my answer? Yes, of course you can, because you're not being judged on what the model is. You can use parts of pastel and parts of 5 forces, because that's the way you would do it in real life. You wouldn't say, oh, I'm not going to use 5 forces because I started with pastel. It doesn't make sense. It's silly. You would answer as a consultant to an owner of a business or the management of the business by using whatever you can. So logical. What if I don't use the correct theory? No problem. It may be common sense. You may not be able to structure your answer well, because if you're doing competition analysis and you're writing, oh, it's very intense and there's a lot of competitors, and you're saying a few things on that, you will get some marks. But if you don't focus on the power of customers, the way the model has it, or the threat of substitutes and using these words, it may not be helpful for you. But I'm not saying that someone cannot analyze competition. I go out for let's say we go out for dinner with an owner. I say, tell me about your competition. I don't tell them, do 5 forces for me. As the person is talking, I'm actually structuring, oh, that's a substitute. I see, power of, so knowing the model will help you, but it's not, the 100%, if you don't do it, you'll fail. You will get marks. Will the exam ask me for a specific model? Chances are they won't by 95%. I can never be 100%. You see, I'm practicing what I'm telling you. There's limitations. However, I don't know. I'm not the examiner. So overall, I don't think you will. You will be asked, something more general. I will tell you on the 17th the key words you will be asked. I have a list of these on 3 slides. You'll really like it. Do the markers correct English? No, they don't. Don't worry. If your English is not good, you're not going to, be judged on your English. The examining team told me personally in a conference, because I was actually a question I said openly in the amphitheater at the time. I said, do you correct the English? And they said, no, as long as it makes sense, we're fine with it. I remember the phrase, as long as it makes sense, we understand what the student wants to say, we're fine. This is a global qualification in 180 countries. What are we talking about? No, I will make mistakes if I write as well. So I hope they're not going to, they would not take that, too strict. Our layout's important, very, very important. I have a section on the layouts coming up on the 17th, but I'll get in detail on that. There's 6 layouts, basically. 6 layouts that you will be asked to use, not 10,000. Okay, 6, 7, there may be a new one, but 6 of them are classic reports. They could be the slides, the project initiation document, a letter, these types of things. Can I start from any question I want? No, never do that, because there could be a timeline. So there's a story. So it's like reading exhibit 1 first, and then you became the manager, and then something else happened, and then, so you cannot go to the last question. No skipping. Question 1, question 2, question 3, and don't be afraid of the questions because they're broken down. There's a question that has 4 sub areas, 1A, 1B, 1C. It's not going to be one question of 100 marks, even though it looks that way sometimes, but that's one. There could be 2 or 3 big areas with sub questions. Can I receive more than 1 mark for a valid point? Yes, of course. There is not only, blah, 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 because of this. If you want to elaborate, you can say another substitute may be considered if the company does this. However, there's more points there. Okay, maybe not 3, but easily 2. So don't think that you have to write 10 valid points for, 10, let's say, specific distinct areas to get 10 marks. You can write 5 areas and elaborate on each and have five areas. So 5, paragraphs or 5 small sentences and get an extra point for that. Will I receive points from defining? Not necessarily. That's what I say. And I gave you an example. I think you could at some point if it's part of your answer. So let me just check the time here. I want to make sure that I'm okay. It's we have 10 more minutes. I can actually go into give you an example, but I do want to go to your questions now because we can do that on the 17th. I have some things lined up for you. So I can pass it on back to my friend Alex to maybe help me. If there's any question, you can probably tell me the question, or maybe you can probably send it in the question box or something. So how do you want to do this? I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I've just popped back up on the screen now. So what I'll do is I've actually been taking in some questions as we've gone along, and I've collated them, and then I'll ask them to you, and hopefully we can maybe even just fire between me and you to give them the correct answer. So I think one of the first questions we saw, which I think is something that would relate nicely back to your flowchart methodology, actually. Okay. It says, what is the best revision technique? I'll pass that over to you.
Yeah, I'm losing you. The connection is not excellent. So let me just, can you repeat that? Yeah.
Yeah, of course I can, Dina. Yeah. So the question, which I believe would relate quite lovely to your flowchart methodology, is what is the best revision technique?
Sorry, I can't hear you actually.
Let me see if I can pop that into the.
I think it's a connection issue.
Not to worry. The joys of the globalization of working from different countries. Hopefully the audience can hear me. I know Dino's sort of pointing to his ear at the minute. So what I'll do is I'll just pause for 1 second, send Dino the question via the question chat box, and hopefully he'll be able to address it that way.
Okay. First of all, I can read the chat box. I didn't hear you for some parts of that, but anyway, the first point is, what is the best revision technique? I think a very good technique would be sorry, can you hear me first of all? Am I okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, perfect. So one of the best revision techniques is to go over, I would say, the 100 areas, and you will see these areas in the slide sequence that we'll be sending you, we'll be sharing with you. There are about 100 areas, or look at the flow chart and go over corporate governance. What would I write if I had to explain it to someone? What is agency theory? What would I write if I had to explain it to someone? So start doing the theoretical part so you can understand what is non-executive director. What would I say to explain it to a friend of mine? Why do we do, value chain? How would I explain that? So I would want 100 explanations basically, because then anything that can come up when you actually have a question, you'll be able to answer in relation with the context of the case and the exhibits. I know it's a simple and fast answer because I want to take more questions, but we will have more time to answer these on the 17th of August. So let me just go over that. That would be my first, let's say, point on the revision. Now, in absence of adequate information in exhibits while replying to questions, please share an example or two where it might make. Oh yes, you can use assumptions. The exhibits don't have everything. You can probably be asked to do some sort of environmental, let's say, answer on pastel, and you may not be able to find social issues. So students ask me, what happens if there's no social areas? You can assume them. If the country is prosperous politically, it's an open environment, technology, robust, you could say it could be assumed based on the information in Exhibit 2. So if you do that, then you can assume. That's the way to make assumptions. And that's a very good idea to extend answers. Remember, because people fail in that way. Another question, is there any way we can see the different formats required? Yes, I have those ready for you. You can see it from the resources. If you want to wait until the 17th, I can share the layouts with you. I have 6 slides, each with a layout. And that's something you can find. If it's something very urgent, I'll be happy to share that as well. So don't worry. I am not using the answer by using the model and writing the answer from the scenarios. Yes, you are correct. You could answer based on common sense without the model. I said that. That's fine. In real life, we don't talk about the model. When I talk in a meeting room, I'm not going to tell them I'm going to use the Baldrige model. I will go over the elements of Baldrige. Okay, so no worries. Sir, should we refer in the answer in brackets which exhibit we took? No, not necessarily. You don't have to. No need to refer to the exhibit if it's 179. No, it's information that's helping you work on an answer. So no need to write which exhibits you've taken them from. Should every answer be in the form of a report? No, because the question will tell you what to do. If it is a report, or if it's briefing notes, which is the same style, you need to write report. I actually was asking a marker. I told them, because I don't mark anymore. I like teaching more than marking. And a marker told me, he said, do you actually correct when people don't write report? He said, yes. If we don't see the word report, they may lose a mark. Can you imagine? So I'm telling my students, write the word report. Slide 1, or project initiation document. It's good to do that. Is there any proper structure to always start the answer? Let me go back to this. To the best way to start the answer, you can see my slides here, would probably be to do the where the W's. I think that's the best way here. A simple system to use. Who am I? Why are they asking me this issue? What is the skill I need to use? Who do I have to write to? What's the audience? What is the type of layout? And which model can I use? That's what I tell my students to think about. And then they start they have 1 hour, almost 1 hour. As I told you, it's a great amount of time to just go over and take notes and make an outline. I still do the same thing in a meeting right now. People talk, I take notes, because when it's my time to talk, I want to make sure I remember what to say. That's the thing you should be doing. Just make some bullets, then plan your answer. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. This is the beginning of project management. And there's a lot of things. By the way, I have some YouTube videos which are free. You can go to YouTube and check me. I'm explaining not too many, but there's a lot of the stuff that we have also. Of course, there's more stuff on the flow chart information. Let me just show you this again. You can go to this and check and click on the areas in the link that we provided for you, and you can go and check on board. I have a 5-minute video on board. There's a 5-minute video on risk management. There's a 3-minute video on this and 5 minutes on that. There's the ACCA team has talked about what commercial acumen is, analysis. So there's a lot of information to start with. There's plenty of time. And my job, of course, and we never should forget, Alex knows this very well. We've been talking about this as trainers. Our job is to inspire you as well, to motivate you to study. And it's a great course. I'll be honest. I really enjoy when I teach SBL because it's business, and that's what happens. So the more you organize your thoughts, maybe through the flow chart, the methodology, or anything you're doing, you will understand the models better, and you can use these in real life. This is something that will stick with you if you want to become an entrepreneur, if you want to manage better and lead better in an organization. So there's a lot of things to talk about, and I do have a 1-hour extra session prepared with the team in Dubai, and we're going to do this live on the 17th of August, where I'm going to go over the theories, how to use them, the layouts, and I'll try to leave like 30 minutes of Q&A asking me, okay? And that's, I think, the best way to do it. So I'm not sure if we have any other questions. The time is, we're almost there.
Yeah,
but
we've got a little bit of time,
yeah.
Dino, so hopefully you can hear me now. And thank you again for your marvelous support. I have to say the flowchart methodology is something that I advocate to students on a regular basis, and hopefully those who've joined us and those who watch this back will find it really useful. I also found your insights on the 6 W's really effective as well. That short model and asking yourself, who am I, what's required, and going through that process really does help actually with the framing and the scenario. One question that I will ask you now, because we've got a couple of minutes, is in regards to ethics and professional skills module. Is that okay?
Yep.
So it is our advice as ACCA that the ethics and professional skills module does really add value to all of the strategic professional level. But in your experience, have you seen tangible, real examples where students have done the EPSM and then gone on to have success?
Yes. That's a very good question, and you're reminding me something, Alex, because I tell my students always to take EPSM, the Ethics and Professional Skills module, before they take SBL. And I think it's a great opportunity now during the summer, if people do have a few days extra, and I think we all do in the evenings maybe, to do the EPSM, because it really helps you with the skills. And there seems to be, from my numbers and me teaching around the world, the people who do the EPSM tend to have a better passing rate from my students than others that don't. So please make sure, it's a very good pass you're giving me there, to tell the students that are listening to do the EPSM. I think it's a very useful model. I've done it myself, honestly, and it was really one of the best, I would say, online things that I've done with ACCA. Fantastic. So yes, definitely.
Yeah, no, I think that's really insightful as well. I think sometimes me telling them to do it isn't always as effective as somebody independent like yourself. And I think that real world experience where you've seen students do the EPSM, then do SBL, and it feeds through to the other exams as well. While we still got, a couple of minutes, we might overrun. I'd just love to ask you again, from your experience, SBL as an exam comparable to other exams, maybe inside or outside of ACCA. How does it compare? Do you think that 20 marks of professional skills really adds value?
I lost you in the last point. You said ASBL compared to the other exams. Yes, go on.
Yes. How do you think it compares? Do you think it sets students up really well for the real world?
Could you write it down? So I'm losing you.
Not to worry.
For some reason. Apology.
Sorry.
The connection is on and off, that's why.
Send to, is that going in the chat? Bear with me 1 second, Dino.
Okay. No worries.
Well,
I have the time.
Yeah, if you can hear me okay, just to reiterate, SBL is obviously designed to try and replicate the real world. How well do you think it does that?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think it does a lot, to be honest, if that's the question. Yes. Yeah. I mean, we do have a lot of information when we deal with the real world, we have exhibits, we have articles, we check what's going on, we check the internet, and that's what we're doing right now. This is SBL, this is real life, and that's why it's I would say a holistic exam covering all the aspects of the organization. And I think that's why people sometimes struggle, because if they haven't done too many exams, in writing the narrative, that may take a little bit more time. Oh, and one last thing, and we can talk more on the 17th, and if we require, I can stay on longer on that day, no worries. That it's hugely important, trust me on this, hugely important to actually do a mock for this course. There's a correlation of people that do mocks, they pass usually, because if they do one mock, they get the understanding of how much time is required to organize the thoughts, check the exhibits, and do things. If you don't do a mock and you go to the exam, first time, let me see, you have no idea what you're getting into, nothing. And don't do a mock at home, with your phone and speaking to friends, and that's not a mock. You take 4 hours and do the mock. And if you do it once, you have an amazing boost of confidence to go to the exam and say, I've done it. I've done it. I know it's difficult. Okay, I did that. That took me some time. I shouldn't make the same mistake again. And that's how people do very well. So the mock, I will be saying that on the 17th as well, is hugely important. Make sure you do that.
Amazing. Well, Dino, speaking of mocks and real life time management, we've got to come to an end, unfortunately. I hope everyone's enjoyed this as much as I have, really have. Thank you so much for your time. We look forward to joining you on the 17th. Thank you for the audience.
Hope you enjoyed
all
it.
Your questions.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Take care, everyone.